New on Curiosity Stream. How do you connect a 16th century potato to limitless energy production? Could Napoleon's toothpick have a direct link to a machine that predicts the future? And how can a 1700s conch shell chart a course to humans connecting their brains to the internet? James Burke's visionary series Connections returns for a new generation. Experience all new Connections. With monthly, annual, and bundled plans, find the one that works for you at curiositystream.com.
It's important to properly dispose of unwanted medication or sharps. MedProject offers free and convenient disposal options near you. To learn more, call 844-MED-PROJECT or visit medproject.org.
Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibiers? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. I have to give a big shout out to Cunning on YouTube for the intro idea. Awesome idea. So thank you very much. And before we get started, want to give a big thank you to Lori, Lynn, Debbie, Elizabeth, Alexa, and Carrie for the very generous donations. We really appreciate that. And yesterday I was talking about maybe doing a new segment at the beginning of episodes where there's not enough content for a whole episode, but I've kind of decided if you don't subscribe to Pretty Lies YouTube channel, go subscribe, hit the little bell. You'll get notifications when something pops up. I think it might be best to utilize the new YouTube shorts to do these little bits of information that take 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes, as opposed to kind of cluttering cases. I really want to keep, if we're doing the mega series for Lori and Chad, I really don't want any other case information there. So I'm still kind of thinking about it, figure it out as we go. So we are going to jump right back into this mega series. If you guys remember, we left off yesterday where Lori Tiley and Melanie Gibb had went to the Gilbert police station to file a report about Charles taking Lori's purse. So there's some things in February that really I couldn't find solid dates for. So Chad writes the foreword in Gibb's book, Feel the Fire. Lori becomes a grandmother. Colby and his wife have their first baby. And at some point she goes to see her new grandchild. And it says Charles was excited, but with all the drama going on, Colby had told Justin Lum he just wasn't talking to Charles at the time. And, you know, I kind of understand, because you know, people are going to side with their mom. They're hearing one side of the story. And, you know, it's just an unfortunate part of when people are vindictive. It really reaches far. So Chad supposedly tells Julie Rowe that money is tight and he is really trying hard to keep his marriage together. And so on February 1st, 2019, Lori checks herself into Community Bridges and is discharged a few hours later. Remember, that hold was supposed to be like 72 hours. And Melanie Gibb told Nate Eaton from East Idaho News that she actually went with Lori and said she passed. Lori came out and said she passed with flying colors. Gibb said, I waited on the outside for her. Tiley was the one that picked us up from there, and they went in the back room and they talked about all kinds of stuff with Lori. And Gibb said she didn't really tell her details about what she was asked there at Community Bridges. And Gibb said, it's probably stuff I don't want to know. So finally, also on February 1st, she sends Charles a text and tells him that his truck is behind the Hyatt Hotel and his clothes were in boxes by the garage. So Charles visits his attorney to get divorce paperwork started, because clearly she's lost, as he said, she's lost her marbles. And his attorney, Taylor Larson, he was on Nancy Grace, and he told her that Charles said this all started years prior when Lori had a near-death experience when they were living in Hawaii, and she became fascinated. She became infatuated at times, obsessive over some of these near-death experiences, and was listening to podcasts about other members of the church who had them and had allegedly had visions of the spirit world and can communicate with those on the other side of the veil. Charles told me she would read books over and over about it. She would listen to podcasts nonstop, and she was just gravitating towards these type of people and these groups. And that's ultimately how she found Chad Daybell, because most of his books, as we know, going through those blog posts, that's what they're about. So you can see that we've always heard about a near-death experience, and just researching for this series, I found this interview and watched it. So according to Charles, she did have a near-death experience, and never heard any more about that. If anybody has, let me know in some comments. So February 4th and the 5th, Lori, each of those days, she gets new phone numbers. And she texts Zulema that this is her new number and to use it. February 4th, Charles files an order of protection against Lori. So you have to list reasons on an order of protection, and then a judge approves it. So he says on January 29th, 2019, she told me that she was a god and was assigned to carry out the work of the 144,000 at Christ's second coming in July of 2020. She said I was in the way and she would have to murder me if I tried to stop her. Then the next day, which is January 30th, 2019, on a business trip to Houston, she called and told me she didn't trust me and would have to kill me when I got home. She said she would have an angel there to dispose of my body. She also said she knew my real name was Nick Schneider and said I'd have to go, and painfully. Okay, so real quick, by the way, today is the 2-year anniversary of when the world should have ended, and we're all here, and they're still sitting in their cells. So there's that. So ultimately, the order of protection was granted. There are some issues, though. We'll get to those. But the rules were they were only supposed to communicate through text and only to discuss parenting and financial issues. JJ was not covered under this order. She was also restricted from coming to the residence on Tomahawk Drive, which is a different one from where Charles was murdered. And she was allowed one deputy to accompany her to get her belongings. And on that same interview, Charles's lawyer told Nancy Grace that their process server could never find her to serve her with this order of protection or the divorce papers. They tried her parents' house, Alex's house, different friends' houses, even a conference in Boise where she had booked a room in Charles's name. And Gibb told Nate Eaton from East Idaho News that Lori stopped going to church to avoid being served. I wonder if her vibrations went down because she stopped going to church. So Lori and Zulema are texting about their powers at this point. Lori is in Hawaii and says she flew to Oahu for temple. So, she leaves. Charles is threatened with legal action on February 5th by an employee about not getting his commission. And this was because Lori took all their money and left him with a few $100. And his payroll, I think we said, was around $8,000. So February 6th, Lori tells Zulema that Charles blocks her gifts. And also Charles finds out about Lori transferring the 2,000 rental car points and kind of worries that she may use those and flee with JJ. So February 8th, Charles officially filed for divorce from Lori. And in the filing, we're going to go through that. And sometimes this stuff can be a little repetitive, but I think it's important to tell Charles's story in its entirety and not skip parts that we already know, because these were such major parts of why all this was happening. So he filed on the grounds of dissolution of marriage, and he asked for sole custody of JJ and also asked for him to be the one to make all legal decisions on JJ's behalf. He asked that Lori only be allowed to have supervised visitation with JJ. And he says with Lori's emotional and mental instability, it's not in the best interest of JJ to be left alone with her, which is kind of ironic because we covered the Joe Ryan custody dispute early on in this mega series, and Joe had supervised visitation only with Tylee. So, well, for a long time. So for finances, Charles says Lori has the ability to earn $1,906 a month based on minimum wage. Now we know she was a hairstylist and she had the ability to make more. Now here's what's interesting. When you're going through a divorce and you have custody issue or child support issues, some courts will go off of your earning potential and not what you actually make. It's crazy. I've heard about it before, but they can say, well, you're working here, but you have a degree in this, and you could be making this much a year minimum. And sometimes they will hold the non custodial parent or whoever is paying child support to an amount that they're not making. It's weird. So in looking at the financial declaration, it would have ended up that Lori would have owed Charles, I think, $291 a month based on that income of 1,906 that he said was her earning potential. And he asked for child support in line with Arizona guidelines. He says that JJ is covered on his health insurance and he has had to hire a live-in nanny to help with JJ because Lori's gone at this point. Like this is when she disappears for a couple of months. And it says that Charles and Lori own and operate Right Planning Group. It breaks down the $35,000 that she took from the business account. And Charles initiated a stop payment on those transfers, but the bank told him Lori is on the account and they can't stop payment. So that, like the cop said, that becomes a civil issue. But at that point, Charles, unfortunately, didn't have a leg to stand on with her being on that account. It says that Charles failed to make payroll and owes $22,500 in commission to contracted representatives in California. 2 of them say they will seek legal action if they're not paid. And Charles says in the divorce petition, if she should return the $35,000, that would be great. If not, just please return the $22,500 he owes to those contractors. And it's like you read this document and you look at everything Charles is having to deal with. He's dealing with Lori out of her gourd. She's talking nonsense. He's got JJ full time now, and JJ was autistic. And I'm sure at times it's very hard, even in a 2-parent home, to parent children with autism. It's just the way it is. He's having to deal with her draining his bank account. I mean, she's emptied the home. He's having to try to get her committed. This poor man, he just absolutely had so much going on. If he would have been awarded child support, he asked for her to pay through the courts, which is very smart because if you have an agreement where you pay the other parent directly and they don't pay for a month or 2, it takes a while to get into court to have that heard. And sometimes what you pay in lawyer fees is way more than what you're owed. Going through the court, they take care of it if you are non-compliant and paying. And he was also smart in asking if he worked that her child support wages be, if she worked, that her child support wages be garnished from her paycheck. And courts will order that as well. They will order sometimes that child support be taken directly out of a paycheck before they get whatever's left. He asked for the use of the home and the vehicle, the marital home and the vehicle. And he says from the home, she also took Bailey's service dog collar. He asks Lori to return his work desktop, which he uses to provide for his family, casual and business clothing, and the $35,000. He said on February 6, 2019, Lori contacted JJ's school to see if he was in class. He said he was worried, as we said before, she may rent a car with those 2,000 points and flee with JJ. So the filing says Lori has made recent decisions and comments that are concerning him about whether Lori is mentally stable enough to make decisions for herself and JJ. He says Lori vacated the residence 2 weeks ago and has limited her communication with Charles, and also her whereabouts are currently unknown. He goes through taking of the truck, the clothes, canceling his flight. And in the divorce petition, Charles says that JJ has autism and he needs his medication, his service dog, and iPad, which has apps for autism. And I can tell you, after working with kids who have autism, especially kids that are nonverbal, these apps that they have for kids to use are so amazing. It is life changing because you go from not being able to verbally communicate the kids to expressing things. They are they're very expensive, but just amazing for these kids to have. It opens up a whole new world between parent and child. So JJ's medication, I looked it up. It was not a controlled substance, which sometimes if you don't have it, it's really hard to get a replacement if it's not due. But Charles had to buy more. But I'm curious, why would Lori even take it? I mean, apparently it made him sleep. So I don't know if she was using it or what, but Charles says he's reached out to her several times to return those items and she's not responded. And I looked it up and it can get really expensive out of pocket. I don't know what his insurance covered, but sometimes it could be $130 for a 30-day supply. And if your insurance didn't cover it, it could be more. And you have to think about it. Charles was kind of broke at this point. She had left him with just a few $100s. And man, he just had a lot going on. So we're going to take a break real quick. And we are going to give a shout to our sponsor for the week, Athletic Greens, which I've been using daily for over a month now, guys. I needed to be sure I was getting all my vitamins because I have a really bad diet. And I really can tell overall, I feel so much better. I struggle with chronic nausea. And so my eating habits are totally affected by that. And with just one scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. What I like best is honestly not having to take like 12 supplement pills in the morning. I get full. It's like, then I don't need breakfast. So I just use this in one scoop and a cup of water every day, which I actually put it in a smoothie. And it costs you less than $3 a day. So you're investing in your health and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. Cheaper than getting all those different supplements yourself. I mean, that can be hundreds of dollars a month. So you're investing in an all-in-one nutritional insurance. So right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop and a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/whattheworld. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/whattheworld to take ownership over your health and pick the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. So back to it, guys. Thanks for being patient with that. That allows us to do what we do with this podcast. And so let's get back to it. So Lori has said she wants nothing to do with the children and Charles could have him because she has more important missions to carry out. He says Lori has not reached out to check on JJ or requested any parenting time with him. Charles is extremely concerned that Lori would abandon JJ and take, his necessities really with no effort to even see him. And he says that Lori's recent decision-making has caused emotional harm to JJ, who has special needs and is unable to understand the circumstances or situation happening. And that is a very vital thing in the life of a child with autism is consistency and structure. They thrive. And if it's broken, it can cause a lot of behavior problems and stress for everybody. So Lori has become fascinated with near-death experiences and spiritual visions. Lori has told Charles she is sealed to the prophet Moroni and has lived numerous lives on numerous planets prior to this one. She also believes she was married to James the Just in a past life and was Joseph Smith Jr.'s grandmother in a past life. She believes she's a translated being who cannot die, and she was sent by God to lead the 144,000 at Christ's second coming in July 2020. Didn't happen. And if Charles got in her way, she would murder him. So he says in the divorce petition, she started calling him Nick Schneider over the phone while he was away on business. And Charles asked, who is Nick Schneider? And Lori said it was him because Nick had killed Charles and taken his identity. also saying she would kill him upon his return home. She said she would destroy him financially, and he says communication has been rare and intermittent. He also mentions the order of protection that he took out. He says he's tried to get her help, but Lori refuses, saying they would discover she's a translated being. He also mentions community bridges for that pickup order. So officially on February 10th is when Lori vanishes for 72 days. That's the date I have. It could have been a little bit before. But so April Raymond, who was her friend in Hawaii, who I just think she's precious. I watched some Dateline and Nancy Grace interviews with her and kind of took a little bit from each to get a clearer picture of what she knows, because we know that she spent some time in Hawaii with April Raymond when she was gone for these 72 days. And we know Tylee was with her in Hawaii. So April said, obviously they were close when Lori lived there previously. So Lori calls from the airport and asked if she could stay. And she said she was leaving Charles. And April said immediately she realized Lori was very different. And April told Dateline that Lori was disorganized and manic. April thought this was just a fight. It would all blow over. And April really felt like Lori was making Charles out to be the villain. And that wasn't the Charles she knew. If you remember, they did a lot together, Lori and Charles, with April. So it's not like this is somebody who Lori can get aside and convince them Charles is a bad person. She has spent time, her and her kids have spent time with Charles. She was talking about the $144,000 to April and said Charles was already dead because he had demons living inside him. And she knew this because Charles was shorter in like height wise. Lori tells, good Lord in heaven, y'all. Lori tells April about the podcast that she's been doing about Chad's books and tells her about Zulema being able to control the elements. April told Nancy Grace that Lori had talked about being translated and about her past lives in front of Tylee. And she said that Tylee was not affected by this. It seemed as if Tylee had heard this before. Here's the thing that really shocked me. And this was not done in the presence of Tylee, but Lori told April that Tylee was dark like her father. And we're talking about that like dark scale. And we know what happens when people get dark. Lori tells April about the alleged affair that she said Charles is having, but Lori couldn't tell her a name or any specifics. So when asked why she thought that, and Lori said Charles had met this person on his LinkedIn account and grocery bills were very high when he went out of town. That was her reasoning. April said that Tylee seemed depressed while there and slept a lot. And I can imagine this kid's just been uprooted so many times. And Lori's talking all this really crazy stuff at this point. I'm sure Tylee's just, she's 16 at this point, or 15. Yeah, she would have been 15, 16. we suck at math, y'all. But I mean, as a teenager, it has to stink not only just leaving everything. And she was probably worried about JJ. I mean, because they weren't together. And I'm sure Lori wasn't letting Tylee call and talk to JJ. So April said Lori had several phones with her. And while she was there, one would ring and she would kind of fumble through all of them. And Tylee made the comment, "Mom, you look like a drug dealer with all your phones." She had pages and pages of doctrine and lists of categories that people belonged in. She was talking about different celebrities and their lightness and their darkness. She was anxious to tell me who was the darkest spirit on the planet, and she said it was Oprah Winfrey. What the heck did Oprah Winfrey do to Lori Vallow, y'all? Good grief. Lori tells April she thinks she's one of the chosen ones, and Lori is there to gather her. And she told her, "You'll have to leave your sons behind because they have a different mission." See, that's a big thing for me right there. You'll have to leave your kids behind because they have a different mission. Later on, and I think if you go back through our texting series, there was something said in a text between Lori and Zulema about JJ wasn't going to live long anyway because he had a different mission. So I, just kind of put those two together. I don't know if they're related, but creepy enough. April obviously declines the offer and says Lori seemed a little frustrated that she did. and told April something to the effect of, maybe you're just not ready to hear the truth. So they only stayed with April for less than a week. And she said after they left there, Lori and Tylee went to a resort for about 30 days. And she also spent some time with Alex at his house in Arizona and Chad in Idaho. So back to Hawaii, Lori tells a friend in Hawaii that she and Tylee had a key to Joe Ryan's apartment. And after not hearing from him for a month, they went in to check on him, finding him dead, which I've always found odd. And we've talked about this before. The neighbor was the one that alerted the apartment complex. I think their dog went to the door and then he smelled the foul odor. So I just wonder why she would say that she found him. But of course, I'm never convinced that she didn't have something to do with that. But in an August 2020 interview with investigators, Gibbs said in the beginning Lori stayed at a hotel, then with Alex at his place in Santan. Then she went to Hawaii, and Gibbs said that was her getaway home. Gibb visited her in a hotel, and Lori told her she and Chad were going to do their mission. And Lori told her that they were going to portal to Idaho, and Lori mentioned Idaho Falls and Rexburg. So Gibb told investigators in April 2021 that at one point while she was staying with Alex, Lori had Serena on the phone, and she said this is the first time that Melanice was exposed to all this as far as she knows. And they were in a circle holding hands. And at one point, it's not clear who, Lori or Melanice said her hands got really hot and then cold. And Serena, who was on the phone, said she related to that. Gibb also said this is the same night that Lori came up with the map idea, showing zombies all over the world. And she said Chad would tell her how many zombies were in each state. And she mentioned also that Lori was constantly talking to Chad and she was infatuated with him. So back to the map, Lori would use her powers to rid these states of all their zombies, and Chad would check the map and say, "Oh, you got rid of them. Good job. There's no more left in this state." Gibbs said that Chad would tell Lori the demon was still in Charles after they tried to cast it out. And she said that always came from Chad. At one point, she said they got the evil spirit out of Charles from their powers, but a new advanced spirit named Garrett came in. Gibbs said the infatuation that Chad and Lori had for each other totally played into this and them wanting to be together. So Chad would come up with different stuff related to the possession of Charles and much later Tammy. So around this time, unfortunately, Charles gets scammed. He starts talking to somebody online who ends up being a scammer. And he realizes, I think really like the day before he was murdered, that he was being scammed online. And but he tells this person in an email that Lori was gone and he had to hire a nanny for JJ. Poor Charles. He's just so trusting. I mean, look, we know that he still had hope that Lori, he just seemed, he had hope that Lori would change and come back. He's too trusting, it seems. He's trusting people online. It just broke my heart when I read that. So February 11th, 2019, we're almost finished, guys, for today. Charles tells staff at JJ's school that Lori has lost it and she's disappeared. And he said that he and JJ were going to go out of town for their safety. They did and returned about 10 days later on February 21st. The school made a child protective services report to inform them that Lori was gone and that Charles had an order of protection against her. So February 14th, Valentine's Day, Charles signs the divorce paperwork and asks for full custody, all that stuff. The next day on the 15th, that divorce paperwork is filed electronically. And Lori just couldn't be found, like we said. So February 15th through the 16th, Chad is a speaker at an event in Boise and in Middleton, Idaho. I think it's Middleton. Alex texts Lori, "Ned was at the temple yesterday looking for you. He thinks you're staying with me." Lori doesn't respond to that text. She probably called him. February 20th, someone, and I want to know who, called Banner Life, the company that Charles had his $1 million life insurance policy, and placed a password on that account. So the same day, Lori texts Zulema, "It's Abraham 4 18. So I looked that up and it says, and the gods watched and the gods watched those things which they had ordered until they obeyed. And then Lori texted Zulema. So yesterday it rained hard all day, but I didn't care because I flew over to Oahu and spent the day at the temple. So last night I commanded the clouds and rain to cease for the whole day today. And it's been sunny and beautiful all day, but the forecast called for rain all week. That scripture made me more patient. Zulema texts how she thinks she's personally getting better at controlling the elements. February 21st, the 23rd, Charles emails Lori saying he's never been unfaithful and he was willing to take a polygraph and hire a private investigator to clear his name of any wrongdoing. And I think that's very telling right there. He's saying, I'll take a polygraph, I'll pay for a PI. But we know she was projecting everything she was doing onto Charles as usual. Investigators note in the document dump that Charles was loving and supportive to Lori in the messages. And from February to June, Charles expressed interest in working on the marriage and not divorcing. And lastly, February 24th, in the midst of all this madness, is Charles and Lori's 13th wedding anniversary. So that's all for today. Just wanted to make a little dent in all of these papers of this mega series. So tomorrow we're going to get into Charles calling Banner Life to change his beneficiary, but there's a roadblock because somebody placed a password on the account. All right, guys, remember, if you're not on our YouTube, go subscribe, hit the little bell, like the videos. Appreciate your support, and we will see you soon.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details. With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.